In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Barbarian kings ruled Rome. The Eternal City had fallen. To many, it was the end of an age. The Roman Empire was dead. But it wasn't. Far to the east, beyond the Adriatic Sea, one city still stood. A city of walls, of gold domes, of imperial ceremony and unbreakable faith. Constantinople. From this fortress of marble and fire, Rome lived on. For 1,000 years after the fall of the West, one empire survived. It faced Persians, Arabs, Vikings, Crusaders, Turks. It was besieged countless times. It was betrayed. It was nearly erased. But it endured. This was not just Rome's shadow. This was Rome reborn. This was Byzantium. Chapter 1. The Survival of Rome. When the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, the Eastern Roman Empire did not collapse. It adapted. The capital had already been moved centuries earlier by Emperor Constantine the Great. He had chosen an ancient Greek city called Byzantium and transformed it into a new imperial capital, Constantinople, strategically positioned between Europe and Asia. Protected by water on three sides, guarded by massive defensive walls, it was nearly impossible to conquer. While the West fragmented under barbarian kingdoms, the East remained organized. Roman law continued. The Senate functioned. Taxes were collected. Armies marched under imperial banners. The language gradually shifted from Latin to Greek, but the identity remained Roman. They did not call themselves Byzantines. They called themselves Romans. The Roman Empire had not fallen. It had evolved. In the 6th century, a powerful ruler emerged. Justinian dreamed of restoring Rome's former glory. He believed the empire could reclaim its lost western territories. Under his command, brilliant generals like Belisarius launched campaigns across the Mediterranean. North Africa was reconquered from the Vandals. Italy was taken from the Ostrogoths. Parts of Spain returned to Roman control. For a moment, it seemed possible. Rome might rise again, but war was costly, and disaster struck. In 532 AD, Constantinople itself nearly burned during the Nika riots. Political factions turned violent. The city descended into chaos. Half of Constantinople was destroyed. Justinian almost fled, but he stayed. And after crushing the rebellion, he rebuilt the city greater than before. His greatest achievement rose from the ashes. Hagia Sophia, a monumental cathedral unlike anything the world had ever seen. Its dome seemed to float in the sky. Its golden mosaics shimmered with divine light. It became the symbol of Byzantine power. Justinian also reformed Roman law. The Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law, preserved centuries of Roman legal tradition. This legal code would influence Europe for generations, but even as the empire expanded, enemies gathered. To the east, the Sasanian Persian Empire challenged Byzantine borders. Decades of brutal warfare drained resources. Cities were captured and recaptured. Borders shifted constantly. Then, in the 7th century, a new force emerged from the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. Within decades, Arab armies conquered vast territories: Syria, Egypt, North Africa. Lands that had been Roman for centuries were lost. The empire shrank dramatically. But Constantinople held. Its walls repelled siege after siege. Greek fire, a mysterious incendiary weapon, burned enemy fleets. The city became legendary, an unbreakable fortress. Survival became the empire's greatest strength. The Byzantine military reorganized into themes, defensive districts that allowed rapid mobilization. The empire became leaner, more defensive, more strategic. It was no longer the conqueror of the Mediterranean, but it was the shield of Europe. Had Constantinople fallen in the 7th or 8th century, European history might have unfolded very differently. Instead, Byzantium endured for centuries, while kingdoms rose and fell in the west, while Vikings raided northern shores, while Charlemagne crowned himself emperor. Constantinople remained the true heir of Rome. Golden domes, imperial court, religious authority, unmatched wealth. The empire had survived its first great trials, but greater storms were coming. Crusaders would march, betrayal would strike, and eventually, the final siege would shake the world. In the next chapter, we will witness the golden age of Byzantium, the clashes with Crusaders, and the beginning of its slow and tragic decline. Rome had fallen, but Byzantium still stood, for now. Anthony, dis-moi, chapitre 2, et on entre dans les croisades, les trahisons, et le début de la chute. Chapter 2, glory, faith, and betrayal. After surviving Persians and Arab invasion, the Byzantine Empire did not collapse, it transformed. By the 9th and 10th centuries, Byzantium experienced a powerful revival. Strong emperors restored military discipline. The theme system stabilized borders. Trade flowed once again through Constantinople. Gold filled imperial treasuries, and the city itself became the richest metropolis in Europe. Its markets overflowed with silk, spices, jewels, manuscripts. Visitors from the West stood in awe. To medieval Europeans, Constantinople seemed like a city from heaven, but strength in Byzantium was never permanent. It required constant vigilance. In the 10th century, Emperor Basil II rose to power. He would become known as Basil the Bulgar Slayer. Through relentless campaigns, he crushed the Bulgarian Empire, reasserting Byzantine dominance in the Balkans. Under Basil II, Byzantium reached a final peak of territorial strength. Borders expanded, enemies retreated. The empire was stable, but after his death in 1025, leadership weakened. Court politics intensified, military power gradually declined, wealth created complacency. And then, a new storm emerged from the east, the Seljuk Turks, nomadic warriors turned Islamic empire builders. In 1071, at the Battle of Manzikert, Byzantine forces met the Seljuks in eastern Anatolia. The battle was disastrous. Internal betrayal during combat led to collapse. The emperor himself was captured. Anatolia, the empire's heartland, its main source of soldiers and grain, was gradually lost. The consequences were catastrophic. Without Anatolia, Byzantium's military backbone fractured. Desperate for help, Emperor Alexios I turned to Western Europe. He asked for mercenaries. Instead, he triggered something far larger: the First Crusade. In 1095, Pope Urban II called Western Knights to reclaim Jerusalem. Thousands marched east. When Crusader armies arrived in Constantinople, cultural tension exploded. The Byzantines saw them as crude, violent outsiders. The Crusaders saw Byzantium as wealthy and suspicious. Despite mistrust, cooperation led to temporary success. Jerusalem fell to Crusader forces. Byzantium regained some territory in western Anatolia, but the alliance was fragile. Over time, mistrust deepened. Western Europe and Byzantium drifted further apart, politically and religiously. The Great Schism of 1054 had already split Christianity into Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic branches. Unity fractured. Then came the unthinkable. In 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, Crusaders turned against Constantinople itself. Instead of marching to the Holy Land, they attacked the greatest Christian city in the world. For days, the city was looted, churches desecrated, relics stolen, citizens slaughtered. The wealth of centuries was stripped away. Constantinople fell, not to Muslims, not to Turks, but to fellow Christians. The Byzantine Empire shattered. A Latin empire was established in Constantinople. Byzantine elites fled and formed successor states in exile. The once glorious capital lay scarred, humiliated, divided. Though Byzantine forces eventually retook Constantinople in 1261, the damage was irreversible. The empire that returned was no longer a superpower. It was a weakened state surrounded by rising enemies, economically strained, militarily diminished, politically fragile. The betrayal of 1204 had broken something fundamental. And while Byzantium survived another 2 centuries, it would never fully recover. In the east, a new power was rising: the Ottoman Turks. Disciplined, organized, ambitious, they watched as Byzantium weakened, and they prepared. In the next chapter, we will witness the final siege of Constantinople in 1453, the end of a 1,000-year empire. The empire that refused to die would finally face its last dawn. Chapter 3. The Last Dawn of Constantinople. By the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was no longer an empire. It was a memory, once ruler of the Eastern Mediterranean, once master of trade, law, and faith. now reduced to little more than Constantinople and fragments of surrounding land. The great provinces were gone. Anatolia belonged to the Ottomans. The Balkans were slipping away. Treasuries were empty. Armies were small. The empire that had survived 1,000 years stood on the edge of extinction. Yet Constantinople still stood. Its massive Theodosian walls, layered, reinforced, legendary, had repelled countless sieges. Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, Russians, Crusaders. The city had endured. But this time, the enemy was different. In 1451, a young Ottoman sultan took the throne. Mehmed II, ambitious, intelligent, determined. He believed conquering Constantinople was his destiny. To him, the city was not just strategic, it was symbolic. It was Rome, and he intended to take it. Mehmed prepared carefully. He secured internal stability. He built a massive fortress on the Bosporus, Rumeli Hisara, cutting off sea access. He strengthened his navy. And most importantly, he invested in artillery. Huge cannons were forged. Among them, a colossal bombard capable of firing massive stone balls that could shatter ancient walls. In April 1453, the siege began. The Byzantine Emperor at the time was Constantine V Palaiologos. He commanded perhaps 7,000 defenders. That was all, against an Ottoman force possibly exceeding 80,000 men. Cannons thundered day after day. The ground shook, walls cracked, dust filled the air. But every night, Byzantine defenders repaired breaches as best they could. They knew there would be no reinforcements. Western Europe sent only token aid. Centuries of division had left Byzantium isolated. Inside the city, citizens prayed. Greek and Latin Christians, long divided by theology, stood together in Hagia Sophia for one final service. Outside, Ottoman troops prepared for the final assault. On May 29, 1453, before dawn, Mehmed launched a massive attack. Wave after wave of soldiers charged the walls. Irregular troops first, then disciplined infantry, then the elite janissaries. Arrows darkened the sky, cannons roared, swords clashed on shattered stone. At a critical moment, a small gate may have been left unsecured. Ottoman troops surged through. The walls were breached. Emperor Constantine V reportedly cast aside his imperial insignia and joined the fight. He vanished in the chaos. His body was never definitively identified. By midday, Ottoman banners flew over the city. Constantinople had fallen. After 1,100 years, the Eastern Roman Empire was gone. Mehmed entered the city not as a mere destroyer, but as a conqueror claiming inheritance. Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque. Constantinople became Istanbul, the capital of a new empire. The fall of Constantinople echoed across Europe. Trade routes shifted. Scholars fled west, carrying ancient Greek and Roman manuscripts. Their knowledge helped fuel the Renaissance. The Middle Ages were ending. A new era was beginning. The Byzantine Empire had died, but its legacy did not vanish. Roman law influenced European systems. Orthodox Christianity spread across Eastern Europe and Russia. Art, architecture, and theology carried Byzantine imprint for centuries, and the idea of Rome survived. Because Byzantium had never seen itself as separate, it had always called itself Roman. For 1,000 years after the West fell, Rome lived on in the East. Empires rise, empires fall, but some refuse to disappear quietly. The Byzantine Empire endured plagues, invasions, betrayals, and isolation. It held the line between worlds. And when it finally fell, it changed the course of history. The empire that refused to die finally met its last dawn.